I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Are your students ready for the new school year? Well, some tips on what you can do as a parent to prepare your kids and yourself for the transition back to school.
A new survey shows that recent graduates of the University of Minnesota Duluth are having good success finding jobs.
And we'll hear the story of an Army medic in our ongoing profile series, Voices of Vietnam.
These stories and more coming up on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. We recorded our show on Friday afternoon due to the Labor Day holiday weekend. And Denny, I'm not ready to say goodbye to summer yet.
Oh, I'm not either. I'm hoping the next 3 weeks of summer are going to be a delight.
3 weeks of summer.
Less rain maybe, huh?
Where do you live?
I'm going by the calendar.
All right. Well, it is back to school week on this show, so let's get started.
All right, we sure will. Thank you very much, Julie. Well, if you have school-age kids in your household, you know how hectic this time of year can be. Children making the transition to a new school year can have anxiety about any number of things. And if they're making the shift to middle school, high school, or college, there are even more issues to consider. Every parent can use a helping hand this time of year and some tips to iron out the rough spots. That's why we've invited Dr. Carolyn Phelps here. She's a licensed psychologist with the Human Development Center and the host of our Speak Your Mind. Thanks, Carolyn, for being here. Appreciate it. Now, kids heading back to school, it can be stressful for kids, but also for parents. How can they work that out?
Well, I think part of it is creating this aura of excitement about going back to school, and really that's our jobs as parents to do, right? Is to create this this culture of learning and an excitement about learning. I know that I have heard from an awful lot of parents who are saying, I can't wait for school to start. I love my kids, but I'm excited for all of us to get back to the more normal routine. And part of that culture of learning is an excitement about going back to school and engendering that in children from the time that they're going off to preschool or kindergarten, and treating this as this is such an exciting opportunity rather than as something always just to be afraid of or to be anxious
Children
about.
can feel that, in other words, how their parents react can be how they transfer that to their children.
I think any feelings can be contagious, not just from parents to children, but from adults to adults as well. That if we are relaxed and calm around other people, we create this arena of calmness. If we're anxious or if we're tense, you've walked into meetings where there's been nothing but tension in the room. That old saying of, it's so tense you could cut it like a knife. So yes, feelings are contagious. Be aware of the feelings that you're putting out there.
Now, anxiety can happen at all ages and stages of life, but let's talk about some of those milestones maybe in the school year that might trigger some anxiety, such as kindergartners afraid of leaving home and that separation that they feel from their parents, and vice versa. How much of a problem is this in the clients that you talk with?
Well, there certainly are some people who, there are some little ones who develop a bona fide separation anxiety disorder. I think what we see much more of in the culture is just a wide range of how difficult or easy is it for kids to separate from their parents. Nowadays, with so many kids being involved in daycare, that is really the first time they have an opportunity to practice separating from their parents. So I think what we see a lot for kids who are in daycare settings or are in the preschool settings or who have those kinds of activities where they have practice separating from parents have already established some skills at separating, and those children are going to be more well-versed and probably more comfortable at comfortable with leaving. What we do know is so many schools have a back to school introduction where you bring your child there, introduce the child to not just the teachers, but the building, because one of the things that often students of all ages are concerned about are things like, where's the bathroom? You know, you think about it, if adults start a new job, it's like, that's what I want to know first is, where's the bathroom? It's like everything is so different. And so if you've done all of those back to school orientations that the school has offered, you're already steps ahead of the game.
And sometimes, Doctor, parents feel anxiety about their children going off to school, particularly a first child or maybe even their last child.
I think so. You know, you have a lot of different emotions because it's a milestone not just for your child, but for you as a parent. It's really great if parents can have other parents to talk to, almost like a parent having a parent mentor of somebody who's been there before about what's that like, what have they done. If you can create sort of a wonderful first day back to school ceremony and ritual in your family that's fun and exciting, not just for you, but for your children as well. You know, maybe it's the children's favorite breakfast. I know a lot of people do that first, like the picture on the first day of school, just something to ritualize and memorialize and make it a celebration.
What about middle school and high school and the pressures and anxieties that are unique to those transitions for kids? How can parents help their kids through those humps?
Well, I think how you're helping your child, first of all, is going to depend on the age of the child, right? You know, and so that younger children are going to need more assistance and more maybe teaching and coping. And if that's been going on all along through the child's age, then you're going to have, you'll have to do a little bit less of that in middle school and even less of that in high school. But I think really one of the keys is that you want to make sure as a parent that you're available and that you remain available to your child as your child grows older, so that as your child enters middle school, that as your child enters high school, that you actually are physically available to the child. You want to keep lines of communication open. You want to create moments of communication. You know, what some parents will talk about is the best conversations I have with my kid are in the car. And so it's like, if you know that about you and your child, then you want to sort of create those, you want to create those opportunities, and always being able to talk about, like, what are the good things that have happened in your day and what have been the challenges that have happened in your day, so that you remain somebody who your child will come to.
Talk to us a little bit about peer pressure and bullying. How do parents recognize that in their children if there's a problem?
I think, so that's where we go back to, it's really important to keep those lines of communication open. I think one of the things that we see with kids a lot is that by the time a child speaks to a parent about bullying, the bullying's been going on for a while. One of the things that parents can do is that they can ask teachers and administrators the hard questions of how do you, and this is what I would do, if my child was in a school and was going to a new school, the first question that I would ask to both teachers and administrators, because that's a really important. You want to know I want to know, how will you deal with bullying? And I want to hear some specific examples about how they deal with bullying. You don't have to, an administrator or a teacher does not have to divulge personal examples in order for them to say, this is the way in which we manage bullying. And as a parent, this is the one area where I would say you need to step in and advocate for your child. You know, a lot what we would say is help your child learn to cope on their own, and we want to teach kids coping responses to bullying, that's certain. But this is an area where parents, I think, also need to step in and say, this is not acceptable. And if a school suggests that a child who's being bullied needs to change schools, then I would say, yes, you need to change schools, but not for the reason that the administrator is suggesting. You want to find a school that will deal with the bullying appropriately.
College-age students, I just dealt with my daughters going through college, and I remember when they started, that tendency to continue maybe being a little bit of a helicopter mom. You talked about kind of giving kids the tools to cope on their own. How important is that as you send your kids off to college?
Well, one of the things that I think a main job that a parent has is teaching their child resiliency. And resiliency is all about how do you cope with stressors in your life, and how do you cope not just to, a lot of people think about resiliency as bouncing back, and what we really want is not just to get to surviving, but thriving, right? We all want our children to thrive. And that's about like giving them the tools to cope. One of the tools is pointing out to them the successes in life that they've already managed. Like you've changed schools, at the very least, you've changed schools from elementary to middle to high school. If you made it to college, you've done that successfully then already. You have already, you're a person who knows how to make friends. We know that in terms of teaching kids how to make friends, that finding peer groups around a shared or similar interest is great, because it creates, you find your tribe, right? You find your tribe in that place. Have confidence in your child.
And we have to leave it there. Dr. Carolyn Phelps, thank you so very much for being with us this important time of year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
The Red Cross has been asking for aid since Hurricane Andrew devastated South Florida and Louisiana. And last Friday, employees of WKKQ Radio in Hibbing heard their plea and responded. Along with 6 competing radio stations throughout the Iron Range, a scrambled and successful effort to collect donations for the Red Cross began.
I think what's most exciting to me is the first time, and I've been here for 17 years, that all 7 radio stations across the Iron Range have worked together, not against each other. And this is the end result is right behind me.
That end result is boxes and bags of clothes and food that have been dropped off by concerned residents in Virginia, Grand Rapids, and Hibbing. Today, volunteers, encouraged by radio remote broadcasts, sorted, labeled, and packed away thousands of pounds of goods. And the smiles on the faces of young and old alike reflected the satisfaction they felt.
Wonderful. Knowing that we're up here in northern Minnesota and helping somebody, across the United States with a tragedy like this is great.
These boxes are headed to Dulac, one of the hardest hit communities in Louisiana. Time, talent, and transportation have all been donated to help ensure a speedy arrival. The Hibbing Blue Jackets missed a football practice today by loading trucks that have been donated by local transport companies, with drivers donating their time. In Hibbing, Joanne Matter, KDLH News.
A survey of recent graduates from the University of Minnesota Duluth shows that a high percentage has found jobs, and mostly in their fields of study. As parents send their young adults off to another year of college, it's good to know that the tuition is money well spent. Here to tell us more about the survey is Janet Pribyl, Assistant Director and a Career Counselor at UMD Career Services. And thanks for being here. Really appreciate you coming in right before the holiday.
Thank you for inviting me. This is exciting.
Yeah, now your office has been doing these surveys of recent graduates for quite a while. Have the results been pretty consistent?
No, not really. It's they go up and down depending on what's happening in the economy. Whether students are going off for more schooling or more, they're getting jobs. There's a lot of things that happen, yeah.
It seems some students will get a 4-year degree, then they don't use that degree for a career. They might work in a coffee shop or get married and don't go to work at all. What are you finding in your survey reports? Are most people using their degrees that they spent hard money for?
Using your degree is an interesting question
because
in our survey we ask, is your job related or somewhat related or not related to your major? And that is one thing that we found is increasing over the years. In fact, I was looking at the numbers, and each year over the last 5 years we're getting a greater percentage saying that their employment is related or somewhat related to their majors. That's excellent news, yes. Now, working in their field or whether
Somewhat related?
yeah. The question is interesting because I worked with a biology major who's actually working in a bank. And at first you might not think that what she's doing is related to her major, but when you start talking to her more, she works with companies who are asking for loans. And a lot of times nowadays with sustainability and environmental issues, companies are asking for loans to implement environmental or sustainable programs. And she says, as a biology major, who's better to evaluate those kinds of programs or what they want to do
Good
to
point.
give them loans? So it's an interesting question.
How are liberal arts degrees holding up in the job market today?
Liberal arts degrees holding up. Liberal arts degrees are still a very good degree to go for. One of the things that I think is shown in our numbers is that the number of students in the liberal arts school are saying that, again, their numbers are increasing, that their employment is related or somewhat related. I think what's happening is they're able to identify that the jobs that they're getting, although maybe not directly related to the name of their major or what they're doing, still was impacted by their degree and their major. And they're able to articulate the skills and abilities they're learning in college. We call those transferable skills in my field. Businesses, companies are coming on board and they're calling them soft skills. So it's the communication skills, problem solving, research, and all of those kinds of things. And what we're finding is the students in the liberal arts, as long as they can articulate that they have those and have examples of those and talk to employers about how they can contribute to that company, then they are doing really well.
So are we in a strong job market right now?
Oh, yes, we are.
We are. Can you address that a little bit?
What do you mean?
Well, are there particular areas that are stronger than others, perhaps in our region?
Well, healthcare. Healthcare is really a big one. Anything in IT, also a really big, strong field. We were talking about this in our office and we were saying, what is something that's sort of new or different or might be coming up? And we're seeing that data, being able to collect, analyze, look at, tell stories with data is really big. So yes, yeah, those areas are, and that's across the country. Yeah.
How important are internships when
really?
it comes to a student getting a job when they get out of school?
Internships are really important, or any kind of what we call pre-professional experience that they can get before they graduate. Any kinds of experience they can get where they can offer real examples to show that they have the skills and abilities that they know they have, but they're trying to convince employers they have. So internships are really good to have.
Can you talk? Oh, go right ahead.
I was just wondering how engaged our local business community is in trying to provide internships for students at UMD and the other colleges in the area.
I would say very well engaged. Yes, yes. We're working with lots of local businesses. We also work a lot with Twin City area businesses. We work with businesses across the border in Wisconsin too, but yes, yeah. Internships are great on both sides. The student gets experience, they get to contribute meaningfully to a business. The business gets someone to come on and do a job for a little less than they might pay a professional and still get some things done. Yeah.
I would imagine parents would have to start looking while their children are still in high school for potential financial aid for college. It sounds like it's not too early to start when the kid's in high school.
Probably not. Financial aid is an area that I'm not all that familiar with, but I would say looking for scholarships or doing other kinds of things would be a good idea. Yeah.
It looks like a lot of the UMD students who were surveyed have been successful in finding jobs, but what about those who are graduating from school and don't immediately find work? Are there tools available, either through your office or in the community, or just advice to help students take that next step toward employment?
What I would say, if you're a UMD grad or no matter where you graduate from, check back with your career office at the college or university from which you come. We work with alumni. We're there. The Twin Cities campus will work with their alumni about a year out. We work with alumni forever. Come back. The most successful students I find are the ones who figure out what it is they want to do and then figure out how to get there. And that's what the career services offices can do, is help you navigate what is it that I really want to do. And then once I have that figured out, how do I put into motion the steps to get me there? And that's what we do all the time with students. And that's what I love about it too.
All right, Janet Pribyl, thank you so much. Congratulations to UMD for what appears to be some success. And
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Janet,
much.
so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having me.
yeah, thank you.
Great.
Starting September 17th, PBS stations around the country will broadcast The Vietnam War, a major 10-part documentary series from Ken Burns. To complement that work, WDSE has been doing interviews with local vets and sharing their stories. Tonight, the second profile in our special feature on Almanac North, The Voices of Vietnam.
I went into the Army right out of high school. I graduated and went right into the Army that fall. I wanted to go into engineer demolition, but they didn't need engineers, they needed medics, which is kind of funny because I almost didn't graduate because I was flunking a anatomy and physiology class, and then a year later the Army made me a medic. So I went through basic training, went through medical training at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. About that time, there's a lot of Special Forces guys coming back from Vietnam. So they had kind of a glut. So a lot of us that were brand new got transferred to other units like the 82nd Airborne Division. I was with the 82nd for, probably a year. And then I volunteered for Vietnam. This was when the Cambodian invasion was going on, and they needed people right away, so we went right out to our units. It was an infantry company, A Company, 4th of the 23rd, 25th Infantry Division. I volunteered to be a medic on the dust-off helicopters. And that was, we would go and pick up wounded right off the battlefield and bring them treat them on the way and bring them right into the hospital.
This is Rebel 6, request dust-off. Dust-off, over. This is Rebel 6, request dust-off. Request dust-off. Roger, we have purple smoke. Is that affirmative?
We had some pretty scary moments, sure. Those dust-off pilots were just tremendous. They'd bring those helicopters into areas that you just couldn't imagine. Sometimes I think about it and I go, wow, did I really do that? I was in charge of all the medical care for these 120 guys. So I made house calls every day, unlike medical people. Now I checked every guy in the company every day to make sure that their feet were okay. It was just one of the things you did.
So do you have a day during your service in Vietnam that you consider maybe your luckiest day?
September 8th, 1970. It's almost like a second birthday. We were ambushed. I got blown off the top of an armored personnel carrier. And I came to and I was laying in some high grass and I had no idea exactly where I was. All I could hear was enemy fire, AKs going off. And so I was trying to figure out exactly what was going on, and I heard the grass moving behind me. And it was that armored personnel carrier that we were blowing off of. He had driven around and was coming back, and he rolled right on top of me. And I tried to scramble out from underneath it, and the track pinned me down. It broke my sternum, and one of the guys that was wounded was looking for me, and he poked his head up and saw what was happening, and he yelled, and the track driver stopped. They actually fired 3 rockets at our armored personnel carrier because we were in the lead. For some reason that day I decided to ride on the right-hand side, and those rockets hit the left side, and everybody that was on the left side was wounded or killed. I was there just a whole year, and then it was a strange deal. I came off of one helicopter off of a mission, a medevac mission, a dust-off mission, and the company clerk and a few of the guys were waiting for me, and they said, "Your orders came in sending you home." The next day I got on an airplane and flew into Fort Lewis, Washington, and was out of the Army. It was that quick.
Coming up on Sunday, September 10th, viewers in the Duluth Superior area can attend a special preview of the Ken Burns documentary. The screening begins at 4 p.m. in the Great Hall of the Depot, with coffee and conversation following at 5 p.m.
It's time now for a look at the business headlines from Business North. Governor Mark Dayton on Thursday extended the deadline for Chippewa Capital Partners to obtain the financing it needs to retain mineral leases at the former Esser Steel, Minnesota site in Nashwauk. Chippewa bought the mine in a June bankruptcy auction. Dayton says the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources will regain control of the leases if Chippewa doesn't obtain financing within 30 days. The company previously said it had assembled a consortium of partners that had sufficient resources to bring the property out of bankruptcy.
Continued protests at an Enbridge Line 3 construction site south of Superior led to the arrests of 6 persons Tuesday. According to the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, 4 were United States citizens and 2 were Canadians. They were charged with criminal trespassing or resisting arrest. It was the 4th protest at the site since mid-August. Approval for the replacement of Line 3 is pending in Minnesota, where an environmental impact statement has been released and is in a public review and comment period.
Another bank is scheduled to open in Duluth. Franzen Bank and Trust has prepared a branch office at 404 West Superior Street across from the new Maurice's headquarters. Franzen is a consolidated banking company that has locations in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and North Dakota. Regionally, Franzen has branches in Ely, Tower, Virginia, and Cloquet. According to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, it has assets of $1.6 billion. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
Call now if you have a comment on our show. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message. You can also send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And the WDSE website is a great place to find the latest program information, the schedules of our 4 digital channels, and the latest news and events, like our upcoming screening of the Ken Burns documentary. And Denny, do you have any plans to get out and enjoy the last hurrah of the summer this weekend?
I think so. There probably will be a journey to the lake. How about yourself?
I also
Same
plan
thing.
to have a journey to the lake, maybe a little barbecue.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
All right, for Denny and the crew here at WDSE, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great Labor Day weekend, everyone.